Sydney University is one of Australia's most prestigious, but traditionally, like most Australian universities, its student base hasn't been very diverse. Numbers of Indigenous students have been particularly low. Aboriginal people make up 3% of Australia's population, but just 1% of university students.
We talked to local Aboriginal communities and it surprised me that so many Aboriginal people still think universities are the place you go to learn how to be less Aboriginal. So we've got a challenge.
Sydney is trying to tackle that challenge. The entry requirements for Indigenous students are lower than for non-Indigenous ones. Some Aboriginal students are given lighter workloads during their first year, and prospective Indigenous high school students are invited for a week-long taste of university life.
I think that it'd be wonderful to come here. I think the facilities are phenomenal, the teachers are wonderful. Even the students, they're so friendly, especially the Indigenous network that they have here of students and non-Indigenous as well.
In Australia, being Indigenous isn't a measure of skin colour. What counts is that all these people have some personal Aboriginal identity and descent, however slight, that others in the community recognise too. Vanessa Myers has an Aboriginal mother, but her father's background is Scottish. At school, an 8-hour drive from Sydney, Vanessa is the star pupil. Her heritage makes that particularly rare. Just 15% of students at Griffith High School go to university. The proportion of Indigenous students who do is much lower still.
One student every 3 or 4 to 5 years is Indigenous goes to uni. We've got some fantastic Indigenous kids at this school, fantastic. I can't speak highly enough of them, but when we say going to uni, no.
Schools like Griffith can access special government funds for Indigenous students. Australia-wide, universities have positive discrimination programmes. Sydney University says unequal treatment of applicants is fair when their starting points are unequal. But are schemes like Sydney's reaching the Indigenous people most in need? There are plenty with more Indigenous heritage than those represented here. Sydney University's initiatives are working. The number of applications from Indigenous students is going up. But there are still many Indigenous students who aren't being reached by these efforts. Still a big gap to close. Andrew Thomas, Al Jazeera, Sydney.